Hello again. My name is Livi Michael. I'm the author of 20 books, one PhD thesis, several articles and short stories, and a play. I also run a podcast about short fiction called Small Pleasures, together with short story writer and translator Sonia Moore. I've taught creative writing for over 30 years and had an even longer relationship with the publishing industry. In that time, the world of publishing has undergone many changes, and my experience of it has varied a great deal. And I want to share some of the things I've learned about it and about writing with you. Recently, I was teaching a residential course where a young woman asked me, "Do you think there's something supernatural about writing? That it comes through you from somewhere else, like channeling spirits or something?" I knew what she meant, but I said I didn't think it was necessarily supernatural. When writers get in the zone, as it were, it might be that different parts of the brain are activated from the ones we normally use. I don't have a definitive answer to the question. I do know that Hilary Mantel believes she was channeling Cromwell when she wrote her great trilogy, and that there is a mysterious aspect to the writing process that can't be fully explained. Although who knows what neuroscience might come up with in future. It's not just writing, of course, that puts us in touch with this mysterious experience. I've recently read a book by the American psychologist and philosopher William James called Varieties of Religious Experience. On page 206, I came across this quote, which actually made me want to write this post. James is quoting another psychologist, Dr. Starbuck, who also wrote about the psychology of religion. An athlete awakens suddenly to the fine points of the game and to a real enjoyment of it, just as a convert awakens to an appreciation of religion. If he keeps on engaging in the sport, there may come a day when all at once the game plays itself through him, when he loses himself in some great contest. In the same way, a musician may suddenly reach a point at which pleasure in the technique of the art entirely falls away, and in some moment of inspiration, he becomes the instrument through which music flows. The game plays itself through him. He becomes the instrument through which music flows. Previously, I talked about how in the long period when no one was publishing me, I gradually came to believe in myself as a writer. Part of the reason for this was similar to the experience described above. When I was writing, I felt as though I was a sculptor who had been working and working with my material, only to discover that the material was working me. It was a great joy to get up each morning and experience this. The game playing itself through me, or becoming the instrument through which music or writing flowed. I assumed this bore some relation to the fact that I'd been practicing my craft for so long. However, the young woman who asked me the question about channeling was a beginner. She'd come on the course, as so many people do, to give herself time and space to write after years of putting it off. I've had people in their 70s and 80s say the same thing. They've put off writing most of their lives, sometimes because they doubt that they will ever be good enough to be published. I hope you can hear the air quotes around that statement. That's exactly what many people have said to me over the years. But this young woman came on the course and suddenly found she was writing and writing and couldn't stop, just as if what she'd wanted to say had been there inside her all along, waiting to be expressed. Michelangelo once said, "Every block of stone has a statue inside it, and it is the task of the sculptor to discover it." Most people who write will have experienced the sense that the story or poem just needs to be allowed to emerge. We might suppress it for many years for one reason or another. There's no time, it won't be good enough, no one will want to know, etc. But it's still there. It's what I always try to teach my students, that they just need to let it happen. Michelangelo also said, "I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free." Which reminds me of my student who felt as though she was channeling spirits. I didn't say this to her, but it does seem as though there is something in the experience of being fully immersed in the writing process that is a little like sensing the presence of the angel. Michelangelo, of course, was an acknowledged genius and master of the form. Most of us wouldn't compare ourselves to him. But in terms of mastery, I just want to talk for a moment about a Japanese word, shugyo. Shugyo refers to a rigorous training that is both physical and spiritual. The Japanese have 6 words referring to various degrees of training: keiko, renshu, shuren, tanren, kufu, and shugyo. The first 4 can be translated roughly as practice, training, discipline, and forging. There is no precise translation for the last 2, but shugyo is the deepest spiritual training possible, and it's associated with mastery of the form. In Japan, there is a spiritual dimension to mastery in art or in the martial arts. 2 of the greatest writers in Japan, Enku and Basho, were not published in their lifetimes. Enku was a yamabushi or vagrant monk, dependent on begging for food and shelter. Basho too lived like a tramp or wandering monk, making a living by teaching poetry. Both these writers lived in the 17th century, and neither of them sought wider appreciation for their work. Both are now famous in Japan and widely revered. In Japan, there is a tradition, therefore, of writing for its own sake as a spiritual discipline. The Japanese monk Dogen once referred to the quest for fame and acknowledgement as a spiritual disease. In the West, we don't seem to think this way, although the Hungarian-American psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi wrote about the experience of creative absorption in his book Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience. He proposed the theory that people are happiest when they're in a state of concentration or complete absorption, to the point that nothing else seems to matter. He described it as an optimal state of intrinsic motivation where the person is fully immersed in what they're doing, and it's characterized by engagement, fulfillment, and skill. In this state, practical concerns, time, food, ego, self, etc., are typically ignored. Csikszentmihalyi described the experience of flow as one in which the ego falls away. Time flies. Every action, movement, and thought follows inevitably from the previous one. Your whole being is involved, and you are using your skills to the utmost. He said that the people who experienced this state were experiencing happiness at the deepest level. There seems to be a similarity between what Csikszentmihalyi says about flow and what the Japanese say about shugyo, and a correspondence between this and the experience of writing for its own sake, without being distracted by thoughts of the commercial publishing world. All I know is each morning when I write, I set out on an adventure or exploration that allows me to enter a mysterious state that brings me joy. I define my success as the ability to enter this state. Nothing else gives me such fulfillment, and it's free and always available. There's always the question of whether what I produce is any good or not, but in my experience, consciousness of other people's opinion of my work, whether or not anyone will publish it, where I stand in the great morass of publishing, is the enemy of the state of flow or creative absorption. I don't think any longer that the publishing world, focused as it is on sales and temporary fame, is qualified to assess what I do. I don't think I can assess it either. All I can know is whether or not I've entered the mysterious state where the writing flows through me and whether or not it has brought me joy. That seems to me to be a good enough reason to do it. What do you think? Is the experience of flow valuable enough to be a goal in itself? This is Livi Michael saying goodbye for now and wishing you all happy writing.